Okay, hello everybody. Today I went on Facebook and posted this. I'm going to read this here to you. You can already read it, but I'm going to read as I go through this. I posted this on the Dungeons and Dragons Facebook page and the Old School Gamers TSR Gaming Facebook page. It's the same post basically, and I just wanted to get some feedback, and I did. I got really amazing feedback. Almost nothing negative, maybe just a couple negative comments, nothing much at all. Almost everybody was positive. Um, and most pretty much answered my questions here pretty well. Some talked about other editions, which I didn't want. I don't care about that. So I've modified some of these comments a little bit, and I'm not going to share every comment, but there's a lot here. I'm going to try to read through it and try to comment briefly on each as I read them. I'm going to try not to spend too much time. I tried this before and I talked way too much. Um, I'm very impressed with the information. Basically, I wanted to see what the general consensus is about first edition versus fifth edition. What are the well? Here, let me just read my post, and then I'm going to read to you some of the comments that I got. I have modified them. I've taken out parts where they talked about other editions because I don't care about that. I care about first edition versus fifth edition. So here's my post on the two Facebook pages. I've only played first and second edition AD&D along with basic D&D, but I know a little about fifth edition D&D. So I've been curious about something for a while, so I thought I'd ask it here. Now I've heard opinions and comments. I've read people arguing about these things, but this is my own survey, so I really and I'm happy with the results. What do you all think about first edition versus fifth edition? Which edition, in your opinion, is better and why? What would you say are the negatives and positives with regards to each edition? I should have said with regards to these two editions, because I got comments about the other editions. I'm not here to debate anyone about editions, and there was no debating that happened as far as I could tell. It may still happen. People are still commenting. I'm just curious what people's opinions are in general. I've seen praise and criticism for every edition, but I've never done my own survey, so I'm attempting to do that now. I'm going to post this on the Dungeons and Dragons Facebook page too. This was my post on the TSR Old School Gamers page. If I get a lot of good feedback, maybe I'll make a YouTube video about it. But just so you know, I'm not doing this to make money. You need at least 1,000 subscribers to make money on YouTube, and I'm nowhere near that. But if I make a video about this, I'll try to post it on both sites, if anyone's interested, that is. So we'll see. Maybe I'll post it there. All right. The Dungeons and Dragons page had to approve the post, so I didn't get nearly as many comments on that page because it came on much later, where the TSR page got a lot of comments. But here are the Dungeons and Dragons comments that I'm going to share with you. I'm just going to read them, and I'll try to make brief comments only. Okay, 5e, when all the material is utilized, offers a vast degree of character customization compared to 1e. You can make two rogues who in play seem nothing alike mechanically, and both will be contributing fully to tactical success. That wasn't an option in 1e until one of them maybe went Thief Acrobat. It's the same with almost every class. 5e characters are substantially more powerful than 1e characters without needing the same degree of magical gear. 5e characters almost all cast spells. Magic is not mysterious, rare, or difficult to comprehend. Every class has access to spells. 5e doesn't care about alignment. It's meaningless in comparison to 1e. 5e is flavorless. A dwarf is a collection of stars, not a culture. I don't know if he meant stats. Is a collection of stats, but anyway, is a collection of stars, not a culture. Same with an elf or halfling. It's the inverse of the customization and flexibility issues. 5e is simple. There are no tables. There is very little math or calculation. 5e is significantly less risky in terms of character death and TPK, total player killed, for those of you who don't know what that means. I'm sure most of you know. Your average party can bring back the dead after a half dozen sessions or so of play. See, and I have problems with most of that in 5e. That I take issue with, and I don't know the full extent of 5e, but I'm already seeing why I prefer first edition. But I'm not opposed to these rules, I just prefer the others. Okay, next comment. I've been playing for about 40 years and I prefer 5th edition in just about every way over 1st. 2nd was fantastic, 2nd edition, and I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for it, but 5th is so easy to play that it's hard to compare. And I would consider that a criticism, not a compliment, not a positive. Anyway, in one sense, I can see how it could be a good thing. The major advantage 1st and 2nd had over 5th is really down to the sheer number of adventure modules, but I'm not sure if that's the case anymore, especially with all the freely available third-party and homebrew stuff there is these days. See, I totally disagree with this person, but I appreciate the fact that here's somebody who greatly prefers 5th edition, but you'll see the criticisms are coming. Okay, next. Basic is too simplistic but great for beginners. AD&D 1st edition is my preferred system, even though it is not well structured as far as the DMG goes. I agree. Goes, in my opinion, and difficult to find that esoteric piece of the rule set you want to use. 5th edition overall is not completely a waste of time. More simplistic than 3rd. Has a couple of nice concepts, in my opinion, again, like advantage or disadvantage. Power creep in optimization is very much king, and I have a problem with that. Too many splat books and scaling power curve is non-existent. First level characters equate to about 4th level characters in other editions thanks to the video gamification of it. I think that's really sad. Death is never very real, and permadeath is almost never exists thanks to death saving throws and even low-level death-defying clerical spells and loads of healing available to every class. I take issue with all of this. Not my favorite edition by far. Participation trophy D&D, in my opinion, again. Play what suits you and you have the most fun with it, and it should be okay. If you aren't having any fun, try a different system. Yeah, obviously. Next, I started playing Blue Box Basic in 1979, and that led to Expert and AD&D in the 80s and into the 90s. Fell in love with every edition. That's interesting. Still play when I can. In the past 4 years, been involved with multiple 5e games, and even though the game mechanics are quite a bit different, in my humble opinion, anytime you can sit down with a good group of people and forget about real life for a few hours, you're winning. Can't argue with that. I'm loving my current 5e gang. We all just leveled up to 4th, and we are having an absolute blast playing 2 to 3 times a month. Okay, sounds good. I like 5e because it combined a lot of what worked from all 4 previous editions and simplified them. And this idea that it's simplified is a common theme in a lot of these comments that I found, that 5e is simplified. I can see that as a positive, but also as a negative. That said, it can be a bit oversimplified and lacks a lot of expansion content. There's some of the negative. While I like the game mechanics of 5e making gameplay easier, again, simplified, I don't like the way official content has been sanitized to keep from hurting everyone's feelings. I really take issue with that too. Why are your feelings getting hurt by games? My goodness. First is more of a challenge and struggle. Death is just a rat bite away. Yeah, 5e is well like adventuring with the game on easy mode and all the health potion you need. First is normal people adventures. 5e is for superhero, low death and risk. Low risk is what he meant, I'm sure. I wouldn't say it's just a rat bite away, but yeah, I mean, you're certainly a greater chance of dying in first edition, which I think makes more sense. Okay, now here's the comment. A lot of comments from the old school TSR Gamers page. I didn't take all of them, and I've edited some of them. Like I said, I've removed stuff mentioning other editions. For the most part, I've removed them, not entirely. And I tried to clean up some of the errors and stuff, any typo errors. Okay. Some of these are positive, the 5th edition, though, even though this is the old school page. 5th edition is nothing like 1st edition or 2nd edition. Original AD&D was like a war game and RPG all at once. Kind of. Roles were, I think is what he meant, rolls were specific and uneven. Maybe he meant weren't, I'm not sure, and were meant to not only mirror fiction at the time, but also to emphasize that the different races and classes had vastly different abilities and functions and their own place in the world. I totally agree with that, and I think 5th edition has lost that concept. The emphasis wasn't on everyone being equal, but on purpose and cooperation. Balance, as it is emphasized in modern versions, wasn't a thing. See, some people say it was balanced and others say it wasn't. Some people say 5th is more, I don't know, it's really odd. Wizards were weak at first, monstrously powerful later, if they could survive. That's another thing. AD&D was deadly and meant to be that way. If you didn't lose your character every so often, it was extreme luck or a Monty Hall campaign. Or maybe you just had a DM who fudged rolls. I did fudge rolls at times because I didn't want characters dying all the time, but they died sometimes. But I didn't want it to be ridiculous. I agree that 1st edition sometimes was too lethal. So we modified it a little bit. Anyway, today's game is all about everybody can do everything as well as everybody else. Heck, they even suggested getting rid of EXP, experience points, in favor of the everybody levels model. Races are no longer different. I think that's ridiculous, except maybe the shell they show to the world. Everyone survives everything, because God forbid you kill a character and offend a player. Everyone is as good as everyone else. You get to heal yourself after encounters. Magic users throw spells faster than machine guns. Everything is overpowered, and it's all so samey. Hell, orcs aren't evil. No one is. Everything is just a difference of opinion, and all are equally valid. If he's right about that, that's really sad. I don't know if he's right, but this is, I'm asking for opinions. Compared to 1st edition, 5th edition is like pee-wee soccer, except less dangerous and less fun. Wow. Okay. I hate edition wars. For me, this isn't edition wars. This is not what this is. For me, I really enjoy the old school feel of BECME. That's basic D&D 1st and 2nd. 5e has the best old school feel aside from the true old school games. The best game, I'm surprised he said that, the best game mechanics and balance aside from 4th edition, and the best depth and character options aside from 3rd edition. I don't agree with everything there, but okay. 5th edition is basically second best at everything. Not to mention is the most popular edition and currently has the most support. Of course they do. The fact that I'm able to share every published book electronically is, nice. Okay. So I prefer 5e the most currently. I say currently because that opinion could change. Okay, you prefer it because it's the most accessible. That doesn't mean it's better. So if that's your reasoning, I understand, but I like 1st edition for nostalgia purposes, but I don't care for the rule set anymore. Not a fan of descending AC. I like either. I don't care. I actually prefer Thaka. And never want to look at a hit chart again. I love looking at hit charts. But the art and feel hit home. I prefer the rule set to 5e, but the feel isn't for me. Okay, interesting. The characters in 5e seem to get too powerful too quick. Apparently they're as powerful as 4th level characters in the original game. I don't know if I've read that comment or if that's coming, but that's if that's true, yikes. 5th edition is cleaner, simpler, and better for new players. I disagree, because the first time I played the game, I understand that concept, and he's probably right, but the first time I played 1st edition D&D in 1980, I didn't know one single rule. I knew none of the rules. I just sat there and played with everybody, didn't know what I was doing, but I had a blast. You don't need to know the rules to play this game as long as one person knows how to play the game. As long as one person knows the rules, anyone can sit in and play. You don't have to, it doesn't matter what edition you're playing. If it does, then that's a bad edition. But okay, it's simpler and better for new players. I disagree that it's better, but okay. I don't know why anyone plays 1st edition. Okay, I do, but okay. We all moved to 2nd edition. Most people did. As soon as it came out. Yeah, most people did. But 2nd edition wasn't necessarily better either. But I have a lot of fond memories for AD&D. More magic items made the game different. Yes, it did. I didn't know this was an issue in 5th edition, that magic items aren't a thing. It was all about magic items in old school. To me, it ultimately boils down to what kind of game you like. If you like high fantasy with the characters being really powerful really quickly and with some pretty powerful innate abilities, fifth does that well. If you prefer grittier fantasy with more vulnerable characters who could bite it if the players make poor choices, or if I would add, or just you had unlucky breaks, first, second, basic is more your game. There are those who say that 5th edition can be made into a grittier game. Of course it can. But as a DM, and 1st edition can be made into a very lighthearted, simple game. It's totally up to DM. It felt like a real chore to do so. Okay. For example, it is much easier to recover hit points in 5th edition, unless as a DM you constantly try to interrupt their rests. I would just change that rule. The recovery rules could be a positive or negative depending on how you look at it. One of the cool mechanics they introduced to D&D, the concept existed elsewhere beforehand, was advantage and disadvantage. Yeah, that existed as a spell, basically, called Unluck, I believe was the spell. I don't know if it came out in 2nd edition or just late in 1st, I don't remember. If you had an advantage, yeah, we know how it works. I much prefer the earlier editions. I tried 5th for a while, and it was just not my cup of tea. Others like the more high fantasy approach, which is fine too. I like the earlier editions because there was more of a dangerous feel to the game. Exactly. Likewise, I enjoy the discovery of magic items and how the party will use them collectively. Magic items largely determine how powerful characters can be rather than progressively more advanced innate abilities. So apparently that's what 5th edition does, and I prefer magic items to more advanced innate abilities. Anyway, I think both systems have their merits. I have pretty much given up on 5th as an everyday game, although I would play it at a convention with friends. So would I. I would have no problem doing that. I would love to, actually. I grew up with 1st edition and basic. My kids play 5th at school with their friends and picked it up crazy fast. Yeah, so did 1st edition kids if they were with someone who knew how to play, but if they had to try to figure it out, that was hard. I totally agree. I played in a pickup game of it at the city library with folks that had never played any D&D before, and they too picked it up fast. I like 5th edition as it's very easy for new players to get on board. See, again, I understand why they're saying that, but you don't need to know how to play the game to play the game. It is role-playing games are unlike any other game because you don't need to know the rules to play. You don't need to. You can just sit down, know nothing about the game, never heard of it, and sit down with a group of people and sit and play and have a great time. Any edition. And if you can't, something's wrong with that edition. Both games have positives and negatives. Good DMs will see the value of both and modify their own games to reflect what they want to see. As an example, I prefer the ascending AC to the THACO system, but also prefer old school leveling with counter experience over benchmark leveling. I agree with that, and I don't mind ascending armor class. It's fine. I do feel 5e makes it very easy for PCs to survive. That appears to be the case. There is someone who says that's not really all that different. I totally disagree with them, but whatever. I just adjust the challenge accordingly. If there's no threat of death, then the PCs have nothing to worry about, and the game gets boring. Exactly. Give them just enough to be worried about it being more than they can realistically handle. I find that 5e takes the innovation of 3e and returns the soul and feel of 1e, 2e. I've never heard anyone say that about 5e, that it returns the soul and feel of 1, because I don't think it does, but maybe in one sense it does. First edition is preference mainly because they have become different genres. First edition is survival horror that morphs into regular heroic RPGing as you gain levels slowly. Slow and steady progress wins the race, and then you retire characters in their keep and start over with fresh ones. We never retired our characters and started over with fresh ones. You can just keep going. You don't have to do that, but I'm sure a lot of people did. 5e is gonzo superhero battles. More akin to Champions or a manga than the old Appendix N titles. I've heard of the Appendix N. I forget what that is. I forget. Doesn't matter. It's a fever dream of power fantasies, which makes it incredibly hard and frustrating to GM at mid to high levels, and eventually quite boring on both sides of the table. So you get bored of your ultimate build, taking over the game and or game world and start over. There is more creativity, I think he meant to say, and fun fun over on the first edition side, and I like struggling to get by at lower levels. That is where the best stories and the most fun happens, generally speaking. And I would say to all of you 5th edition players, if you happen to see this video, and I know that might not be many, take to heart what he just said there and see if first edition, if you find it to be quite fun. Now I've got to remove this thing from my, it's dumb, okay, anyway. Ah, my goodness. All right, there we go. No, I just did it again. Okay. Okay, AD&D has been and always will be my favorite system. I have played some 5th edition and it is good, but it is a much more simplified version of the game. There we go again, simplified. In the end, play what you like, of course. Duh. To sum it up more simply, in 1st and 2nd edition, power comes from loot. Magic items and such differentiate your human fighter from your friend's human fighter. 5e, all the power comes from levels and is inherent in the classes, with magic items being unnecessary, but add bits of flair. As far as playing goes, 5e is near impossible to die unless you have some really bad die rolls or a sadistic DM. 1st and 2nd edition are more challenging in that regard, so I feel more rewarding. Totally agree. As has been mentioned by others, I love D&D for the nostalgia, but at this point, I really find it's a beginner's TTRPG. I don't know if I agree with that one. It's great for getting people into it, but feels very restricting as far as what you can do as a player and a DM. It's not restricting at all unless you follow the strict rules of the game, maybe. There are so many more systems out now that take what D&D started and have improved upon it. D&D did that too, and it's okay. I understand why he's saying that. I still love AD&D, but because very few still play that actively and finding 5e players is relatively easy, I'm playing almost exclusively 5e now. Both editions have their strengths and weaknesses. Neither is better than another. Maybe objectively neither is better than the other, or I'm not sure if that's right. I think a matter of opinion as to which editions are better than the other. I wouldn't say that neither is better than another. I would say they're different, and some people prefer other ones over, one over another. So for each person, one will be better. I see what he meant though. First edition was the king of its time, but a bunch of stuff doesn't work with the raw rules that had to be homebrewed. It makes literally no sense that Thief is the only class that has unlimited advancement for demi-human races, particularly warlike races like dwarves. I wouldn't say it literally made no sense. It didn't bother us all that much when we played, but I see why somebody might take an issue with it. Anything to do with feel of the game, survival, horror, fantasy, etc., is replicable and doesn't belong in a discussion about the mechanics of the game. This isn't necessarily just a discussion about mechanics of the game, but again, I see what he means. This is a discussion about what you like. So you can certainly talk about the feel of the game too. I enjoy how they added improvable skills in third edition and progressed that to 5th edition. THAC0, however easy to understand, was cumbersome and limiting. Not necessarily, but okay. They edited that in 3E and pared the resultant ridiculousness down in 5E. Okay. They dialed a lot of the superpowered rules back from 3E and added the base that we know and love from editions past. Okay. I haven't played 1E in years, primarily because it's a bit more challenging to pick up for first-timers, and the absolute lethality is a bit tiresome. It doesn't have to be challenging to pick up for first-timers if the DM knows what he's doing, and the absolute lethality is only there if you want it to be. It doesn't have to be. Again, D&D is open-ended. You play it the way you want to play it. There was never a reason for a new edition of the game. After 1st edition, the only thing that was necessary were revisions, alternate rules, new classes. You can add things to the game. There was never a reason for a new edition. And if somebody wants to have a discussion with me, feel free, because I'm not here to fight. I'm here to discuss, and we can disagree on things. But there was no reason for D&D to ever make a new edition. All they needed was a revised version of first edition. Revised versions would be fine. Like Unearthed Arcana was not a revision, but just an addition to the game, additional rules, new character classes, new things. Okay, first was a lot of fun, but also a poorly organized mess as far as finding things. He's partly right about that. DMs had to memorize DMG page numbers. Yep, we put markers on them just to play the game. Some of the rules were confusing and even contradictory, but home ruling was encouraged in a big way and usually worked out because the target market was people that actually read the books. Later editions have players that argue rules that they have never read. But back in the old days, it wasn't if you had read them, it was how many times you had reread them. I read the PHB and DMG cover to cover 3 times in 1978. That's unreal. 5e has a lot less modifying numbers to remember with advantage versus a DM screen full of charts, and has a more pop culture TV and movie product placement and other commercial backing, so is growing the fan base greatly. Overall, that is probably a good thing, though growing pains are certainly occurring in the community and the times are causing it. Yeah, of course, that's going to happen. Between the editions, I would say first and second is obviously what he prefers. I have tried and played third, fourth, fifth. What I can say is that I liked a grand total of 2 things they did with it from third edition on: altering the THACO and armor class calculation methods. That is it. I hate everything without exception. Everything else that they did to the game when Wizards of the Coast took over. Utterly missed the mark in third, which is why they went to 3.5 in record time. Blah, blah. Fifth was a joke. 5e is not about any real role-playing and barely about anything with working as a team with other players, given the classes are all simply overpowered rapidly. I think he's right about that, but if you disagree, feel free to let me know. I love that Wiz brought AD&D and RPG-type games into the mainstream, but I hate how they did everything about it. I won't play anything Wiz puts out anymore. I'll play anything they put out, but I won't buy any of their products. Just for the record. Unless I really like something that they put out. They had their chance. Gary Gygax and the team had it set as a game that could teach kids and some adults how to communicate and coordinate. Right, it taught people stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Altering the AC, but trying to straight additive method removes some of the math side. Okay. 5e is, in my opinion, one step away from being worthless and is nothing more than a bastardized woke version of what TSR had. It has been turned into nothing but an attempt to make your character better than your teammates in a superhero-like build. I think he's partly right about that. I don't think there was any need to bring up woke, but whatever. Comparing 1e to 5e is something I do frequently, as I do run both versions, and many of the players come over from 5e. That does take some explaining. The big strength of 1e is balance. It wasn't fully, I think he meant balanced, it says baked here, when the edition came out, but toward the end, the 1e system really sings if you're using all the pieces together. Players have told me they love how 1e emphasizes teamwork and soft skills, like preparing for expeditions, gathering information, that are often relegated to a single die roll in later versions of the game. You really have to work together and plan well to succeed in first edition AD&D. The big drawback to first edition is that the materials are hard to find these days. Yeah, it should be that hard. 1e books have become status artifacts, though good reprints are available. Exactly, reprints are available. Some people don't like the lack of digital support. Okay. The big strength of 5e is that it's easy to play and there's tons of players for it. Options in the official materials are pretty limited, even with a brand new group. Okay. DMs don't have to be too careful to peeps even starting at first level because the game is so simple and limited. Even a passable DM can convert or improvise adventures on the fly with no prep work. The big drawback to 5e is that the system is so loose and unstructured. If you've played older editions, it feels like there are huge chunks missing. Many of the complex topics fall back to tell the DM what you want to do and they'll figure out what happens. This means that players will ask to do patently absurd things and expect to have a chance of succeeding. They're not being unreasonable either. The game literally says to do it that way. 5e's community can also be selfish. Yeah, I think any community can be. The emphasis on story, background, funny voices, etc. can lead to excessive main character syndrome. Probably true. 5e has a problem with players that seem to think the entire game revolves around them. that can be any group though. A lot of selfish players. That's very normal. I prefer first and second to the later edition. I never had a problem with THACO or limited customization compared to the third edition. The challenge was also higher in first and second edition. You really have to work on dying in fifth edition. That's a fun comment. I'm going to stop it here. We'll see how this video does. Maybe I'll pick it up from this point and make a part 2 of this and read the rest of these comments right here. We'll see. Talk to you all later. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'd love to get into a conversation, but I know I don't get a lot of views, so if I don't get comments, it's okay. I'm just sharing. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Talk to you all later.